I'm so excited that you're all here, wherever you're tuning in from. My name's Allison Escoto. As Melanie said, I'm the head librarian at the Center for Fiction, and I'm so excited to be able to introduce these two amazing authors today. I just want to say one quick word about our Kids Read program. We are able to reach out to New York City school kids all school year long and bring them into our building to meet with authors and discuss their books with them. We are also able to give a copy of the author's books to each student who participates. And whenever you make a purchase, such as buying one of our wonderful author's books today, you are helping us continue that and helping us to provide our community with a love of reading and writing from an early age. So thank you so much for being here. And now, without further ado, I'd love to introduce our two authors today, starting with friend of the center and lovely person, Mahogany L. Browne. Mahogany is a California-born, Brooklyn-based writer, organizer, mentor, and curator. She has published several books of poetry and facilitates performance poetry and writing workshops throughout the country. She is an Agnes Gunn, Cave Canem, Air Serenby, Poets House, Rauschenberg Fellow, and the current artistic director of Urban Word NYC. Her previous books for young readers include Woke Baby and Black Girl Magic.
Yep.
She's joined today by the phenomenal Jason Reynolds. Jason is a #1 New York Times bestselling author, a Newbery Award honoree, a Prince Award honoree, a 2-time National Book Award finalist, a Kirkus Award winner, a 2-time Walter Dean Myers Award winner, an NAACP Image Award winner, among many other stellar honors.
She's going to run out of time reading the awards.
It's true. He is also the 2020 to 2021 National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. His books include When I Was the Greatest, the Track Series, and Long Way Down, which received a Newbery honor, a Prince honor, and a Coretta Scott King honor. He lives in Washington, D.C., and you can check out his ramblings at jasonwritesbooks.com. Thank you both so much for being here, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you. I actually got shy for you, Jason. The bio is bananas, but also the work is next to the bio. Like you are, an idol for so many, including myself. So I'm excited to share this space and time talking about woke. Folks are already in the chat talking about what is this book exactly. Yeah. Woke of Young Poets Called to Justice. It is an anthology of poems. It is a collection of poems. It is an encyclopedia of poems when thinking about the building blocks of young people becoming global citizens. And it is written alongside with Elizabeth Acevedo, Olivia Gatwood, and every picture is illustrated by the very great Theodore Taylor III. And when I say great, I mean he did Misty Copeland's children's book. He did Shaquille O'Neal's children's book. He did the brother that did the DJing. He started DJing for hip hop. He's our founder.
Cool Herc.
Yep, he did Cool Hercs. Like he's.
I'm gonna need you to know Cool Herc. I'm gonna need you to know Cool Herc.
I had a brain fart because I haven't eaten lunch and I'm really nervous. I'm a little nervous. I knew that.
We like brother and sister. That's so strange. I talk to you all the time in real life.
I know. I had no comida. So 1, remember your history. Hip hop history is vital. And 2, eat your Wheaties, your rice checks, eat a lunch before you do something that's going to be recorded forever. Thanks, Mo. Woke, Young Poets Called to Justice. I'm excited to dive into it, to read some poems and then talk about why we started where we started. I think the first place to begin is how I came and begged you to do the foreword and what made you say yes. And then if you could read it.
Yeah. First of all, you ain't beg me. You just asked me. Well, really, the original story of this is when you first started with the concept of this thing, we talked about it. And I was on board, and then life got in the way. And then the only thing I could actually offer the book was the foreword. But I knew, just because I've known you for so long, and it's interesting because my accolades and these sorts of things are these strange appendages that I try to ignore. I think when we talk about you, we also have to acknowledge that you are a staple in the poetry community. You are a pillar in the poetry community. A lot of y'all who are listening, a lot of your favorite poets, specifically your favorite Black poets, contemporary Black poets, have had the privilege of coming through Mahogany L. Browne. I won't call their names because I won't put them on blast, but just know that if you like a poet right now, that's new-ish over the last 10 years, there's a good chance they've had to sort of bump into and work with and come through the sort of the camp that is Mahogany L. Browne and her sort of, the integrity of poetry that she brings forth. And so when you ask me to do it, for me, it's like, one, it's the homie, and two, the homie is connected to that, which is great. And so I can't not say yes, or at least offer whatever it is that I can. So what I had to offer at that time was the foreword and the poem that precedes it. And so I'll read the poem and then read the foreword. Is that right, Mo?
Yes.
Okay. I grew up in a house, in a family where my mother allowed me to talk back. Talk back, she said, talk back. You really gonna let that boy talk back? Just know not to disrespect me. I'm still your mother, but know that no ain't just no. And if you want to talk back, talk back. But I ain't gonna hear you unless you say it like you mean it. And to mean it don't mean it gotta be said mean. I'm still your mother, remember that. You still a human, remember that. So stand up straight, lock your shoulders, open your chest, and say your human thing so I can hear you cross the room, cross the world over all this noise. Woke, a young poet's call to justice, is in book form exactly what my mother meant. It's a collection of proclamations megaphoning to the young world that they are human and therefore have the right. I'd even go as far to say that they have the obligation to talk back, to speak up, to connect with fortifying elements outside of them, as well as those that exist within. Mahogany L. Browne, Elizabeth Acevedo, and Olivia Gatwood are together beacons shining light on prejudice, resistance, self-acceptance, friendship, intersectionality, and inclusion. They are also serving as beacon builders, each of the poems acting as blocks, strengthening and heightening every young lighthouse that reads them. Nothing is heavy-handed here because Browne, Acevedo, and Gatwood clearly understand that soft-handedness works better. Hugs, handshakes, the ladling of shared soup, hand claps, finger snaps, a wave goodbye, peace signs, fists in the air in solidarity, palms reaching up for what's clearly an attainable sky. Justice looks like many things. To my mother, to me, it was often the freedom to talk back, the freedom to own my voice. What woke knows is that to the future poets, and by poets I mean you, it will look like those things and also much, much, much more. When I was writing it, it's funny, I was thinking back to like my childhood and thinking about the things that happened in my childhood that have made me into whoever it is that I've sort of become. And the linchpin, the cornerstone of my childhood was the ability to say what I wanted to say in my house. I was never muzzled. I was never muted. I was never made small. My mother made me big, even when she disagreed with me and even when I disagreed with her. Even if I was 10 years old, I could say I disagree. As long as I stood on my square, I was allowed to disagree publicly and audibly, respectfully, but confidently. And so now it ain't nothing for me to say what I need to say whenever I need to say it. It's a powerful, powerful thing. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, Mom's is the greatest. She built a fire starter. But I also I'm wondering, learning and growing up with that kind of rearing, how different were you received once you got outside those doors, outside of a space that, expected you to speak up for yourself and know what you were talking about? Like how different was the reaction?
I'm sure it was jarring to some, especially if you're an adult, right? Because I was never the kid to be like to roll over or accept whatever you say just because you got age on me, right? If you say something, make me know, prove it, right? Nobody deserves anything that they don't earn, including respect, right? Including respect. You want respect, earn it. come, make me care, right? And that's the kind of kid that I was because of the house I was raised in. On the flip side, I also think it caught people off guard because people have an expectation of a little black boy growing up. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't that I was just talking back, but I was talking back thoughtfully. I was thinking through things and trying to figure out what I stood for, what I felt. You know, I had to mind my own thoughts. I had to mind my own psyche and consciousness. And I think a lot of people were just taken aback because people lean into the stereotype that young black people don't have the ability to express themselves in a healthy way. And that's just not true. It just doesn't always look like you want it to look. It's healthy for me, right? Just because it makes you uncomfortable don't mean it's not healthy for me.
Right. And
I think people were sort of taken back by that as well.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm going to read something.
Let's
couple
do
of
it.
things.
Wait till I read this poem out of here. Go ahead.
I think I'm going to start with right to the reason that I think I began the project in this way. When I came to Jason and Olivia, it very much was like, how do we create an anthology? And it's like how do we create these building blocks to have these conversations of very large ideas and put them into something that is tangible and accessible, that young people can do, and they're already doing. They just don't understand that they're doing it yet. They don't know this is what it means later. So I want to start with one of the greats, which is Claude McKay, right? And responding to his work, not just in the title, which is after one of his poems, but also in the form of it. And I'm going to show you what it looked like, because boy, it's so beautiful, these pictures. Right to, after Claude McKay. If we must live, let it not be in silence. Each shadow surrounding our right to be outraged, let us not sit hands crossed while our stomachs growl upset, full of bad food and assembly line ideas. Listen closely. Our bodies bubbling up angrily at the lies we have been fed. If we must live, let no one decide how our hearts beat, or how our songs should be sung, or if our neighborhoods are worth protecting, or if we are allowed to walk in stores freely. If we must live, let it be a true life, one full of choices and opportunities, one that isn't designed to push us into a corner, keep us quiet and formidable, keep us without unique opinions and educated understandings. If we must live, and we must, let it be with our fist in the air, to remind the people that we will speak up for what is right. We will always stand up against that which brings us harm. We will demand what is just, not only for our own lives, but for the lives that are impacted by injustice. Let us live to fight for a better day, every day, for everyone. And folks are always like, oh my God, it's so powerful. Oh my God, it's so big, it's so much. But really, when you think about speaking up and how powerful you just speaking up is against silence, what you are acknowledging is, the power in us standing together. And there are power in numbers, right? There are power in numbers, but when you are silent, Audre Lorde said it will not protect you, but it also means that you are complicit. You are saying it is okay for what I'm seeing that I know is not right, that I feel is not right. It is okay, right?
Before you continue, before you continue, is it okay if I read the original Claude McKay poem? Because people don't know the poem If We Must Die, where that poem comes from. You know what I mean? Like, it's a direct response to a poem that is such an important poem, and you've written such an important response to that poem. Can I? And it's short. Can I just read it right quick, just to give some context? Okay. So the Claude McKay poem goes like this: If we must die, let it not be like hogs hunted and pinned in an inglorious spot, while round us bark the mad and hungry dogs, making their mock at our accursed lot. If we must die, oh, let us nobly die, so that our precious blood may not be shed in vain. Then even the monsters we defy shall be constrained to honor us though dead. O kinsmen, We must meet the common foe, though far outnumbered, let us show us brave, and for their 1,000 blows deal one death blow. What though before us lies the open grave? Like men, we'll face the murderous cowardly pack, pressed to the wall, dying, but fighting back.
That's right.
That's right. And so I think it's just dope to think about Claude and what he was saying. If we must die at a time where death was imminent.
Right.
And that now these years later, the fact that you and I can even have this conversation is a reason to discuss if we must live.
Right.
You know.
And how relative it is. It ain't changed, right? And I love having that discussion with young people now because they know better than we do. A lot of adults are responding to things that go viral, but young people they've been aware of it. You know, some may become apathetic because it happens so much and there's no fanfare. But I live in Brooklyn and memorials on the corner don't stop. It's never stopped. And us not finding the people who have murdered these young people doesn't stop. It's never stopped. Now we're having larger and harder conversations because it's caught on camera and it's spread out through the world, right? So I think how relevant Claude McKay is then to now, like that literally is imperative. Like we gotta know. We gotta know who made the canon possible. He made the canon possible. Yeah. And I know that young people always get shook. They're like, oh, what I'm supposed to do? Go out and start a riot, start a protest, start a rally. And that leads me to the poem that I want to share, which is Activism Everywhere. Again, I like showing the pictures. I hope y'all can see it. Our voice is our greatest power. When we stand together, we can speak up against mistreatment. We are saying that we will not be silent about the mistreatment of people. We are saying that we will not be silent. We are standing tall and firm because we believe in equity and equality. We are standing tall and firm. We are not yielding or bending because the conversation is uncomfortable. We are not yielding or bending. We understand activism happens online and offline, in the streets picketing and in the classroom teaching, on the blogs writing, on the internet sharing information. It happens everywhere. It is active. It is energy. It is resisting to be comfortable when we all have yet to feel safe and free.
Yay.
And so small, right? Like, it's just like, it's a blip. We teaching this poem, talking about this poem because young people, like when you not empowered, but reminded of your power, when you are reminded that your voice matters, your you matters, like you saying something means something, and the collective we becomes larger and makes real change. Like, we can start right now.
I remember that I was in the school one time. Was I in Brooklyn? I don't know. It was a black school in the black neighborhood. It might have been in Cleveland. I don't know. But I remember there was a moment, you always got sort of like the knucklehead who's, talking, he's cracking jokes in the crowd. And so, for me, that's fine. I'm all about it, right? So I'm like, yo, you want to come up on stage? And usually in these moments, a shorty would be like, nope, right? But he was like, yep.
Oh, that was like, Brooklyn. Cool. That was Brooklyn.
I was like, come on up here. So he comes up on stage. I'm like, so I give him the microphone. I'm like, go ahead, bro. Like, go ahead, say whatever he was saying. Say it on the microphone so that everybody in the crowd could hear, right? And again, I'm thinking he's gonna be like, nah, I'm just playing. He like, all right, right? So he takes the microphone. When he takes the microphone, then the moment he's holding the microphone, that's when the nerves kick in, right? So now he's nervous. So now he's nervous, right?
Yeah.
And then he says something like one where he says like, yo, and the acoustics in the gym echo out, right? So it's like, yo, you can hear his voice bouncing off the walls, right? And when the moment he does this, all of a sudden he turns around and looks at me, and his eyes are about this big all of a sudden. Not because he was afraid, but because he never heard his voice that big. And then he started to talk on the microphone and laugh and crack jokes. And he kept like, he'll say something, then he'll listen. He'll say something, and he'll listen. And it was all about this moment. This is a moment in his life where suddenly his voice is made big And it changed everything. And then he gave them back and was like, yo, my fault for interrupting. Like, but thanks for letting me come up here. And he went and sat down. We went on about the show. Right. And but that's an amazing thing to think about. What happens what happens when you find out your voice matters? Sheesh.
The world changes. The pivot is bananas.
Yeah.
The pivot is bananas. And I mean, and it's obvious so many of us were not raised the way you were raised, where you get to talk back and not have to flinch. You know what I mean? Like, I was raised with young people saying, like, what do the kids say in their place, right?
Right.
Children
Right.
mind adults. And here I am out here promoting, talk back, speak up, ask hard questions, don't be comfortable, challenge. Like, do that. Challenge everything, challenge everyone. I'm not saying be reckless, you know?
No.
And so for that young man to finally hear his voice be that big, I mean, I feel that now. Like, that, I get chills thinking about what that must have felt like. And I see them seeing themselves not only in the words that you've written, but like in so many moments where, like, the young poet laureates, they just had their reading, and to see someone who's under 21 be the youth poet laureate of the nation, and understand, like, oh, I get to talk about environmentalism now, right? In a manner that's not just recycle. Like, no, what are you putting on your face? You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
that's really, really cool.
For sure.
Is there anything in the book that you have that you think, I don't know, is asking young people to look at who their voices will reach? What they
a whole bunch of bananas.
Yeah. I want you to share one that's reaching.
To me, there's the poem "The Poet's Pen" was a poem that you wrote. The Poet's Pen. It's gonna be weird to read one of your poems in front of you, but I'm gonna do it. You know what I mean? the Poet's Pen. I think. Listen, here's the thing. I think, you know, Baldwin always talked about how when the fights, when the civil rights, during the civil rights era and the marches and the protests, the hosing and the dogs, he was not there, and it hurt him. It made him feel ashamed that he wasn't there while his family and friends were being murdered in the street. Then he came home, back to America, and he still did not join the protest. And the reason why is because for him, he said it was equally as important that someone document the thing, that someone write about the time. Toni Morrison was the same way, by the way. Toni Morrison was not in the street, right? Toni Morrison was in the publishing company, right? Trying to figure out how to amplify voices to make sure that was her position. And I think everybody has a part to play. I myself as a writer would like to believe that I could do a little bit of all the things, but where my power lies most is in the pen, and I recognize that. And so this poem, "The Poet's Pen," is my dream. The first line of this poem is amazing. What does the silence of a people sound like? We could probably just stop right there. We could just end the poem, right? Like, I feel like
I'm gonna workshop that poem, baby. Let's get it.
Yeah, I feel like that's really. I might have to use it for like an epigraph for one of my own books. Like, what does the silence of a people sound like? I actually might make it a prompt for one of my right joints. With your permission, because yeah. Okay, one more time. I'm gonna read the whole poem now. What does the silence of a people sound like? Maybe the silence you hold in your chest, the silence before a body falls to the ground, the silence after a cry pierces the air, the silence when listening for a newborn's breath. Or does it sound like an orchid growing toward the sun? Does it sound like a moon moving above the crashed waters? Does it sound like a poet and the poet's pen moving against the paper, speaking stories about their home city and a single mother's song? Moving against the paper, speaking stories about farming and a father's well wishes, or a graduation ceremony. Moving against the paper, speaking stories about bicycle spokes and trading cards, clicking hello to passersby. The silence can sound like many things. That is why we choose to write poems as a people's almanac for those unable to speak. I hope and pray that someday people look at the work that I've done over my life as a people's almanac for those who have been unable to speak. I don't really know, for me, in the tradition from which I've come, right? And there are many traditions, and we all have many different ways that we approach our work. But for me, I don't know if there is any other reason to do this. The toil of writing is far too tremendous for it to be arbitrary, for it to be for me to be careless about it. It's too hard to do it. You see what I'm saying? Like writing is too difficult for me to not try to make it matter for someone who doesn't have the ability to utilize their voice in a way that can be heard. It's that simple. And so this poem really means something to me. It struck me in an interesting way, and it's more, and not just as this sort of like inspiration. You know, we love the word inspiration, right? Like I want to be inspired. It's like, no, I want to be charged, right? It needs to be accountability, right? So for me, this poem is language of accountability. Are you doing your job as a writer? Are you doing your work? Now, everybody ain't got to feel like this, right? But for me and mine, are you doing your work to make sure that you are alleviating the weight from the people coming up after you, for the people who are around you who don't have the opportunities you have?
Right.
I'm a fortunate Black man.
Right.
A fortunate Black man who gets to live a big life. Right? That's real. The least I could do is make sure that I justify why it was given to me and honor the people who won't ever get to live like this by making the work about their lives feel real, whole, and necessary.
I love that you carry not obligation, but understanding, like the accountability of who you are and your position. Like you have a position of privilege that a lot of people that we grew up with, that raised us, that died for us to be here, will never know. And some people don't really move in that way. They're like, I'm here. I am not an idol. You know, they pull the Charles Barkley. I am not
a role model.
I'm not a role model, idol, hero. And it's like, cool, dope. But you are, like, you know what I mean? Like, you still are.
You don't get to choose that. That.
Your choices resonate with someone specifically because there are so few of us in a spotlight. And you got to come to terms with that. And whether you just choose to say, I throw it away, I don't care, and I'm willing to, try and sleep at night, and hopefully you're like yourself 20 years from now, or I'm gonna take this position seriously, and it's just not for giggles, but there's something at stake here. And I like that you write like that. I fear if I write like that, me writing like that will be accepted in this new space, because poetry resides, right? Like that is our platform. What do you stand for? And when someone finds out that you are fake, when someone finds out that that poem you wrote is really just like you shooting, game, but it ain't really your life, there's so many opportunities that are lost, right? Like, because why are you here? You're supposed to be a truth seeker. I thought that meant, when you said you were a poet, I didn't mean that. I didn't think you plagiarized. I thought you were into the craft. Even when you just, I'm a performance poet, I'm a slam poet, like all these things that you want to, compartmentalize your discipline. That still means like there is something there that you have to atone with. And because I come from that space, when I come to the page for young people specifically, I'm not swayed. I'm more so like, they're gonna let me say this because you know what I mean? Like, what do I care about book sales enough to lie? Nah, like I feel like young people been waiting. I feel like young people been waiting for someone to tell the truth, speak it plain. Don't tell it slant.
I agree. Don't tell
it slant. Like, yo, kick the truth. Let me think. Now you got me all charged. Speaking of truth, blown out stars whisper about justice. I wanted to make sure that as much as I was writing about these small building blocks to larger ideas, we talk about intersectionality, which was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. We talk about, I talk about Trayvon Martin and Mike Browne and Akai Gurley. I try not to anyway, like, go over it sweetly, like, and then someone died. No, like, look up the names, look up Emmett Till. Like, you need to be shook and shaken awake. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just a thing that happened so long ago. The reason Emmett Till's name still resonates because it is happening right now. Ahmaud Arbery is Jared, you know what I mean? Like, all of it's the same. James Byrd, all of that is the lineage of a lynching. So Blown Out Stars,
which is the lineage of America.
Word, one of our greatest exports. So in that, Blown Out Stars whisper about justice. There's another poem in here where I say the names in a poem where I'm trying to explain racism, which was intense, talking about, I've never explained racism to a kid. You know what I mean? Like, why don't they like me? I've never had to do that. And this was my attempt, but the poem I'm going to read is the one that's before it, and it's about justice. I think as someone who funds, like, my art funds justice work. Like, I'm always, if I get something in, like, here's my poem, go to it. If I can donate, if I can use my platform to help people who are doing that work, I want to. But I also wanted to be able to talk to young people about what justice work can look like. And it's, of course, in the form of a metaphor. What if the crowd were a forest? How would you keep it from catching on fire? Tonight, the horizon is lit up like the brightest bulb. The town sits beneath the blown out stars. The town vibrates with a nameless sound, but the wind remembers their names. And someone somewhere whispers injustice. Right then, the flames grow legs and arms and hands with a booming heartbeat. Now, remember the forest? Can you see the crowd, the young wildling, the necessary weeds? The patch of wildflowers scattered, the manicured brush of lush and wilting leaves growing, growing, growing. What if the sky rained? What if all the forest of people needed was water? What if all the breathing bodies required to live and thrive and graze and grow in harmony was justice? Word. So I felt really like, is that enough? Is that enough? And so then, of course, I wrote the poem that, like, now I'm gonna name everything now, right? Because I want the moment of, like, oh, you coined it with nature, and I really turn to nature a lot here, which is what I think COVID-19 is doing too. It's like, nature's had enough. Get in the house, wash your hands, relax, drink some water. You know what I mean?
We're gonna heal ourselves, right?
Chill out. Let us reboot, right? So thinking of that as justice as like nature and nature resetting itself, and if we can just envision that, because we're so kind and generous to nature and generous to animals, to pets. Like, people are nicer to pets than they are to people. So I wonder if I could do that and have a conversation about justice.
Right.
How to do it, how to make it accessible. The poem I'm going to read now is the one that I talked about beforehand, and it's about prejudice and racism. Amari explains a frown to her little brother, and this is totally fictionalized. Like I said, I've never done it before. My daughter, her name is Amari, and I don't have a son. So it's all, I was building, all right, this house. And the idea of the poem being a house, I just want to be able to have many doors for people to enter and find themselves in. Even if you can't get in the front door, maybe the back door. So this is one of those attempts at creating a new door. When my friends walk through the convenience store, almost always someone follows them. It's like a shadow of distrust looming above their bronze skin. They say it's because we look different. When my babysitter walks through the store, no one ever follows her. It's like a cloud of light guides her path through each aisle. She says she probably reminds them of the mother from old black and white TV shows. When I try to explain to my little brother what it means to be judged, what it means to be ignored, what it means to be silenced, I can only think of Browne versus Board. I can only think of Jim Crow. I can only think of the 13th Amendment. My little brother is too young to understand the 13th Amendment abolished slavery and involuntary servitude in the United States. But my little brother knows what a smile means. And my little brother knows what a hug means. And my little brother knows what a friend is. When we go to the park with our babysitter and I watch the clouds move above his curly, curly hair, I feel like anything is possible. I tried to explain to my little brother what I learned in history class and why I'm so sad. I want to tell him about Jordan Davis or Trayvon Martin or Emmett Till, stories from long ago and just yesterday that I read about people who look like us and our friends and our neighbors. But he grabs my hand and squeezes because the words get caught in the tears, threatening to run from my eyes. I want to cry because my brother is my little brother. He's my favorite person, and he doesn't care about how different I may look. Just that I'm as beautiful and friendly as our grandmother, and I'm as kind and curious as our grandfather. So instead, I lead him to the squeaky swing set and think I'll wait another day to explain to him what it means when someone doesn't like you without ever saying hello.
I think it's funny. I was sitting here thinking as you were reading, I think it's so important that we continue to create poetry for young people about these things. As I'm sitting here thinking about my own like childhood, when I was like 12, 11, 13, I wasn't reading much, but I would occasionally go into my mom's room and open up Nikki Giovanni's My House and try to figure out what she was talking about, or open up Cotton Candy on a Rainy Day and try to figure out what she was talking about. And I wonder what it would, but there's so much Shel Silverstein, right? And shouts to Shel Silverstein, by the way. Like I ain't, this ain't no slight because I can't do what he was doing. You know what I mean? With the Sidewalk-Ins and Running Babbitt and Light in the Attic, we're brilliant for what they are and for creativity and imagination. But there's not a lot of poetry with young people in mind about the things that young people are actually living through in this particular time. And that might be, as we think about the industry that we operate in, it's something to think about. I mean, we do have Wade Hudson. They did a collection called, I think, Lift Every Voice. I'm messing it up, but I was in it. I'm messing it up, but I'm sure people in the comments, y'all know what I'm talking about. I'm blowing it, and I shouldn't blow it because I know these people very well, and it's on my shelf somewhere. There's like that one, but there aren't many books. I mean, we love the novel in verse, right? We're doing novel in verses, which is good. Novels in verse, which are all fantastic. But it would be dope to think about a proper collection of poetry for teenagers, like woke. You know what I mean? Around the things that matter to them,
right?
That don't sugarcoat it or cookie cut it or eggshell it. Right, just poems. Lift Every Voice. Thank you. Poems that are meant for them. I think we have to start making a shift. It's the same thing with Stamped, right? Like writing Stamped was all about writing a book about the things about history directly related to their lives and their voices for them. You know what I mean? And I think we should probably figure out how to do the same with poetry.
Yeah.
One, I think it'd make more readers and more writers, and two, I think it would confirm their suspicions of, you know what I mean? It would confirm their suspicions that the world is broken. It will confirm their aspiration to fix it. It will continue to sort of fortify them as they sort of deal with the quest and the bifurcation between being irresponsible and being irreverent and figuring out what that means and which one is the one that matters most. All these things we could do through poems.
Yeah.
Something to think about. I think you should do it.
Oh, okay.
Again. I think you.
Yeah, no, I'm already. Yeah.
Norton anthology. A Norton anthology of young people. We should do a Norton anthology.
Of all young people,
of young people's of poetry for young people, right? I don't know why Norton anthology ain't been like, yo, we got all these other blah 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why they ain't been like, yo, we should do a big sort of thing, poetry for young people.
Yeah,
it's important. Contemporary poetry at that.
Yeah, contemporary poetry for young people. I think there are a couple of small presses that have done it. Like Toss the Earth was one, but I did that on my own with like Harvin Slasant and Jeff Kagan Trenchard and Adam Faulkner and Jive Poetic. And I know Right Bloody did something called Courage for young girls, and it was an anthology for teenage girls. and actually one that I used to teach with called From Totems to Hip Hop. But like those are massive, right? Like I do agree that there needs to be something that is responding to the contemporary voice. And also like we have this whole series of youth poet laureates now. What would it like? How dope would that be? You know,
how dope would it be? And even for the books that exist on the smaller presses, like we just gotta do a better job at blowing them books up.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like I hate the fact that we only operate within this specific machine, and it's like it's a lot of. I mean, you people don't know, but you are a publisher, and you put out a lot of people who became these big poets in our country, but they had to come through your press when no major house would publish them, right? And I think we need to figure out ways to make sure we're giving voice not just to the kids, but to the people who love the kids.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So
it can be
Shout Mouse Press.
Great
Shout out to Shout Mouse Press. Shout Mouse Press. They DC folks. Shout Mouse Press is fire, and they do a bunch of stuff where they with children, with young people as authors, and publish their books and put them out all over the city and all over the country.
Oh, nice.
Check them out, everybody. Shout Mouse Press. Check them out. They're dope.
Okay. Oh, I literally my chat was closed the whole time.
Come on, like, oh, you missing out on all this love.
Oh. I'll go back and look at it more.
300 people in here.
Hi, Leanne. Oh, I love Leanne Alexander.
Now you want to talk to people.
I know, I'm the worst. But Leanne is my person. She's so good, yo. When it comes to justice work, she's one of them pivot persons that's like, whatever you want to do with justice work, I got you. Let me help. That is imperative. But I want to talk about who brought me here. Really? I think like this is, and you don't care. I know you don't care. We talked about it yesterday, but it is always important for me to like do my rightful nod and bow at people who bring me into spaces, because it's a rarity that folks ever think I need help or I need a hand. You know, I have been doing this for 20 years. 20 years. I ran the New Eurekan for 13 years. But for 20 years, I've been a full-time writer, a poet, writer, journalist. Writing was my life. So when it came to poetry, that was the response for me missing journalism. But when it came to me writing poems for kids, Kwame Alexander said something at Furious Flower conference, like, just turn that joint into a kid's book. And I was like, wait, what? I don't understand. Like, I don't get it. But it was you who had already been talking to me about YA novels. And I kept on being like, yeah, Jason, like only you can do everything. Cause like I told you at Peaches in Bed-Stuy, shout out to them and the Brownstone Punch crew. What I told you, like, you are literally top 5 storytellers of our time. And I don't even mean our time. I mean of generations time. Like not our past, you know, our elders and the future. You're going to be top 5, period. Because I just see it. I see how you can connect dots for people in a way that's otherworldly. And so I wanted to nod at you and say thank you for like keeping on like, Mo, no, you got to try it. And because of you, I finished my first YA novel, which will be out in January, Chlorine Sky. But also it was how I got woke baby and Black Girl Magic. Like you walked me through. And I want to share one of my favorite passages that you wrote from Bettina. It's from the Track series. You should just get the whole collection. It's 4 of them books, just get it. I'm going to read to you what made me actually cry as a Black girl who learned how to braid hair, who then came to New York as a writer. The Double XL, they sold the company, so my internship was canceled. Like the paid portion, they were like, you could work for free. But so the paid portion was canceled. So I made a living in New York City as someone braiding hair, right? So when I read this, I like cried like a sucker, which is great. I do Maddie's hair every Sunday for 2 reasons. The first is because Mom Lee can't do it. If it was up to her, Maddie's hair will be in 2 Afro puffs every day. Either that, or Mom Lee would have shaved it all off by now. It's not that she don't care. She does. It's just that she don't know what to do with hair like Maddie's, like ours. Ma do. But Mom Lee, nope. She never had to deal with nothing like it, and there ain't no rule book for white people to know how to work with black hair. And her husband, my Uncle Tony, he ain't no help. Ever since they adopted us, every time I talk about Maddie's hair, Uncle Tony says the same thing, just let it rock. Like he's going to sit in the back of Maddie's class and stink face all the 6-year-old bullies in berets. Right. But luckily for everybody, especially Maddie, I know what I'm doing. Been a black girl all my life. The other reason I always do Maddie's hair on Sundays is because that's when we see Ma. And she don't want to see Maddie looking like she ain't never been nowhere. And so Maddie's hair is done. We get dressed, as in dressed up, all the way up. Maddie puts on one of her church dresses, white patent leather shoes. That's most people only wear on Easter Sunday. But for us, for Ma, every Sunday is like Easter Sunday. I put on my dress too, run a comb through my hair until it cooperates. Ugly black ballerina flats because Ma don't want me looking fast in the house of the Lord. Then Momly drives us across town to Barnaby Terrace, my old neighborhood. Right. And so then I just want to give you the moment. I'm almost done. Just chill out so I picked up the can of beads and shook them in her ear like one of them Spanish shaker things. And just like that, she calmed down and let me tilt her head forward so I could braid the last section, the bit of curls tightly wound at the base of her neck. I dipped my finger in the gunk on the back of my hand and massaged it into Maddie's scalp. Then I stroked grease into the leftover bush ball, tugging it straight, then letting it go, watching it shrink back into a dark brown cotton candy. So annoying. He's so good. You're annoying. Then came the beading. Today, 30 braids. So 3 red beads on each braid, 90 beads. I used tiny bits of aluminum foil on the ends to keep the beads from slipping off, even though I knew they would anyway. They wouldn't slip off anyway. But who got time to use those little rubber bands? Not me, and definitely not Maddie. I love that. That is literally my favorite. Yes, crying. Yes, yeah. Symbolic details. Did you understand? Like, this book is so good. Like,
that's my favorite one. I love that book. Yo, you know what's wild is it's an exercise in vision. I always tell people when I started to write Patina, and I want to make sure we get questions, Mo, because we only got like 10 minutes. But when I started writing Patina, there was all this chatter going around me about whether or not I could write a girl protagonist. And my defense was always like, of course I could write a girl because girls are human beings, right? So you start from the fact that they're human, you're almost there, right? And I grew up around a bunch of black girls. My whole neighborhood was black girls. My whole family is black girls and black women. And the one thing I've always tried to do, even now as I continue to sort of deconstruct my own misogyny, right? Like, because it's there, right? I'm a man in America, so it's there. And as I sort of continue to work on that and undo a lot of that stuff, this was an exercise in seeing, right? Can you see them? Right? Like, just because you know them don't mean you know them. Just because you know them don't mean you can see them, right? And so I wanted to make sure that I wrote this little black girl from a place of somebody who loves her, right? I love you, Patina. All the Patinas in the world. I love Patina. I told 15 years ago, I wrote you a letter about how much I see you and how much I loved you and how much I saw you when you felt like people couldn't see. People couldn't see what you were trying to do. And I think that's a sword I'll die on every time. I won't always get it right, but it's a sword, but I will damn sure try every single time for the rest of my life to defend black girls and black women and to stand up for black girls and black women the best I can, because they've surely stood up for me my whole life. So shout out to Patina.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you have the courage to do it, and I love that it feels like someone who's watched someone lovingly. You know what I'm saying? Because anybody can write about something that they've observed, but not many people can write it with loving and knowing hands. So as someone who braids hair, I think I hit you afterwards like, yo, this part right here.
I also was the little boy in the neighborhood who could braid people's hair. So it's like I knew, I know all that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You put grease right here, you know what I mean? You get that thing right there.
Blue magic.
Put that thing. You get that blue magic. You take the end of that comb and you part it and you pull that thing back and you part it like that. Listen, don't even get me started. Get busy. ain't get me started. You overhand, underhand, however you want to do it.
Yes,
You know what I
the
mean?
next conversation is on how to braid your dome. Love it.
Hey, ain't nothing to it. Ain't nothing to it. Can I read one more poem and then from this book right here, and then we can take some questions?
Let's get it. What book is that right there? What's that?
This Kissing Casket. Hey, all right. So this book is Kissing Caskets. It's a Mahogany L. Browne book. This is the jam. This is my favorite of all of the Mahogany L. Browne books. This is not a children's book, but language is language. You know what I'm talking about? Like we do what we do regardless.
That's that Krista Franklin book cover right there.
Oh, yeah, this book is fire. There's a lot of poems in here that are really inspiring, but the one I want to read is called Bowling Alley Snitch, which I love. I love in its simplicity, but also like, because I just know it. I just know. All right. Bowling Alley Snitch. Third grade adoration, and grandma wear her yellow polyester, something snazzy. Beautiful Chad every week, light-skinned, beautiful afro curly head Chad. Pink teddy bear sweatshirt was my shit. I told her, I like Chad face. Grandma in her yellow polyester, too tickled, and I don't know where the joke is. Next week, Chad say he don't want to share my French fries. Chad don't want to be my friend. Chad don't want to sit next to me. My pink teddy bear sweatshirt go ugly. It ain't pretty no more. It's just stupid and pink. I looked at grandma, her gap tooth looking back. A numb hurt so soft in my chest, I almost forget it lived there. Yo, so look, this is a fire poem about so many things to me, and I'm sure so many things to you. But just this a beautiful piece about to me about young childhood, in this case, young girlhood, the yearning for a thing that feels so close and yet feels so far away, and it's the distance of that thing that feels the most normal. And I think there are a lot of us who grow up like that. There are a lot of us who sleep with yearning as the softest pillow. Right? Like that, like that's the normalcy, right? This idea of desire and want as the thing that feels most like normal. And that the moments where it feels close are the most electric moments of life. But boy, does it come down hard when life sort of shows itself as life. And of course, now we get a little older and you realize, well, we can also bend some of these things, right? We can make a life. But when you're young, that feeling of this is just the way things are is captured so perfectly in so few words in that poem.
Yeah.
Whew.
My grandma, shout out to Coco. She definitely snitched on me. She's like, she think you cute. Wait, what? Don't
Coco. Hey.
Don't tell.
Man, I can't even talk
that's
to
good. I love it.
Chad.
Yearning is the softest pillow. Someone said it too. Yes, Zenzel. Yearning is the softest pillow. All right, everybody. That's your writing prompt for today. Get it popping.
Y'all want to take some questions? We got a few minutes.
Yep.
Like 5
I'm
minutes
to the questions. Poetry is one genre many students don't gravitate to. What poets influenced you as a teen?
Oh, as a teen, I ain't read no poems. I wasn't as a teen. I mean, for me, when I was 15, here's what I say. When I was 15, that's when I started writing. That's when I started sort of performing poetry. And so I was looking at, back then there were all these poets. I mean, this is a long time ago in the 90s. And there was like, Saul Williams was a young poet. Jill Scott was a young poet back then. And we were all kind of, sniffing around them. But when I got a little bit older than that, that's when I discovered the Harlem Renaissance and the Black Arts Movement. And honestly, it really did. It changed me. Reading Langston Hughes right now still is like, woof. You know what I mean? And we've gotten so far from that style. Everybody sees that style as like rudimentary and overly simplistic. And it's like, yeah, you try to do it. You know what I mean?
You can't do it.
Reading,
it's hard.
The creativity of Amiri Baraka, like using sort of language as using sound as language was huge for me. Percussive language, right? Like percussive language on a page was crazy for me. Who did you look to when you were young?
It's funny because my first poet that I memorized was James Weldon Johnson, and I won the oratory competition in 5th grade reading that poem. By the time I got to high school and I was in AP English, I was reading Dante's Inferno, and we were asked to do a remix. And so the poet that I thought best to remix it, or poets, was NWA. And I turned in the remix of Dante's Inferno with NWA lyrics, to which the teacher, she was like, absolutely not. This is not poetry. You know what I mean? And literally, that was the end of my love affair with poetry, being told that what I said was poetry, what I thought was poetry, what I knew to be poetic wasn't enough. I gave up, and I didn't return to poetry for another 5 years. So it was James Weldon Johnson. They kind of ran us into the ground with, with the tried and trues. So there were only so many poems that we were able to like really learn, because we didn't have books back then. We just had like dittos. But James Weldon Johnson was the one I remember. And then by the time I got to high school, I was like, oh, NWA is that's a poem. Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? And she was like, nah. And that leveled me. I did not come back to poetry until I was 21.
She was wrong. So for the person who asked the question, what they like, poetry is hard for young people. Young people love hip hop. Poetry ain't that hard.
Nope.
Right? The way that we frame it and teach it makes it difficult, right? But if you explain to them that the lyrics that they rap every single day is poetry, then they realize that they've already loved it. They've been loving poetry for a long time. They just don't know.
That's right. And stop telling them no.
All right. And stop telling them no. Lord, please stop telling them no.
Can you recommend a short guide to writing poetry? Oh,
that's a question for you.
Actually, I got them right by my bedside, because I mean, it matters. I got Writing Down the Bones, which is like, that's your go-to. That's like stellar work. Then I got like Madness, Rack and Honey with Mary Ruth.
Oh, that's my book. Holy moly.
It's good. It's good stuff. Actually, I can't see all the way from over there. Let me see.
Madness, Rack and Honey. Holy moly. Talk about a book.
Right. I got The Writing Life with Annie Dillard. I got Poetry Handbook by Mary Oliver, which is timeless.
Can't go wrong. Yeah.
And of course, The Life of Poetry with Muriel Rukeyser. Those are like easy go-tos. But then if you like looking for some more academic, critical lens kind of thinking, I think what is it? Writing the Right Imagination with Toni Morrison. Writing in the Dark. And it's about why is Blackness always absent from like formal text. So those are my go-to, and they all work. Like you can pull something from any of them and tailor fit it to your class. Hi, my name is Lexi and I'm 12. I want to know, what books are you guys reading during quarantine? Mr. Jason, I love your book so much with 5 O's. You are so inspirational with 10 O's. Thank you. Woo! That's for you, champ.
Lexi, first of all, thank you, Lexi. I appreciate that. What books am I reading right now? Lexi, I'm gonna be honest with you. It's been a tough time for the kid, man. I am reading something, and I'm gonna tell you what it is. But I just want to tell you, like, if you're struggling right now, like if you're having a tough time with reading or writing, me too. Like it's been brutal. So right now, I'm reading a lot of this, which I've read before, but I'm reading it again. So this is not something that maybe you want to read it, maybe not. But this is The Making of a Story. It's a massive book, but this is like the Bible when it comes to writing. And I've just been kind of revisiting some things, trying to sharpen up my tools a little bit. I'm reading Elizabeth Acevedo's new book, which I got in the mail a couple days ago, called Clap When You Land. And that is one of the best first pages I've read in a long time. Brilliant book. I'm reading this joint right here, which is called The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. It's an adult novel. And it's pretty dope. I'm trying to think, what else am I reading for kids? Not that you can't read that, by the way. If your mom's good with it, I'm good with it, you know. What else? I'm trying to think. What am I reading right now for kids? I'm reading a lot of stuff that's not out yet that people want me to blurb. So I'm reading a book by this brother from Jamaica that's genius. So I'm reading that. I'm reading Brendan Kiley's new book, which is dope. It's not out yet, which is dope. I'm about to read Lamar Giles's new book. So I'm reading stuff that hasn't come out yet, but definitely check out Liz Acevedo's Platt When You Land. It's a solid book. It's really dope, really, really smart. That's all I can think of. I'm so sorry, Lexi, but my brain is kind of fried. The quarantine is definitely affecting me. But thank you so much for the love, homie. And I'm working on something new. So hopefully I got something for you soon. All right.
We have one more question that we can dismount with, which is what made you appreciate poetry as much as you do?
You broke up a little bit. What was the question?
What made you appreciate poetry as much as you do?
Yo, so here's my theory. This is a good question. So here's my theory. Poetry is the piano of literature, right? And what I mean by that is, if you're a musician, the theory in music is that if you can play the piano, then you basically can understand how all the other instruments work, right? Because you can see all the notes in front of you, and if you can use both of your hands, do all these things, then picking up a guitar is a lot easier. Understanding the violin is a lot easier. Playing the clarinet is like you can figure out other instruments if you understand the piano. Poetry is the piano, right? If you can bite down on poetry, this is what I've learned over the years, because poetry was my first discipline. And earlier today I had an interview, and the brother said, what would you tell people who are struggling to write things outside of poetry? And I tell people all the time, I have never looked at anything else that I've written as anything other than poetry. So all the novels in my mind are just poems. The short stories in my mind are just poems, right? The same mechanics that I used, or that I was trained to use as a poet, the way to manipulate language, the way to manipulate space and format, like all of those sort of tools and devices that I learned as a poet, the poetic devices are the same things I use in my prose. And so I realized how important poetry was and how powerful it was when I started to write longer work, because I realized that I had an edge, I had an upper hand, because I knew how to wield the sword very differently because I started as a poet.
Yeah.
What about you?
That. I love that it's the piano. That's a great analogy. We got to make that a little chapbook by itself. That moment right there. Oh, so good. Poetry for me, honestly, it presented itself to me in a very different way. I was told to shut up a lot as a young Black girl growing up, and poetry was the one way that I could get away with everything. I didn't have to be quiet. It was a performance. It could be angry. It could be sex. It could be whatever my mood was. And because it was considered art and entertainment, a source of entertainment, I got to tell the truth without the instant repercussions of being a kid, of being a young person. And when I came to poetry again as an adult, because like I said, I did fall out of love with it. I was just like, oh, I can do whatever. And then they were like, there was someone that said, I'll give you an F if you don't fix this. And that changed a lot for me. But when I came back to poetry, it was because in journalism, there's very specific marks you have to hit. And in one sense, I was writing an honest story, but the editor decided that it was too honest and said that if we print this, we're going to lose our advertising dollars. And so I turned back to poetry. Like, it was an instant pivot, not me understanding why, but just knowing I needed to, because writing couldn't leave my life. It's my blood milk. It is literally how I'm able to move, right? Like, that's it. I'm very clear on how I'm here today is because poetry allowed me to see my purpose and to know that whatever hurt I was enduring, it would pass because I had this access to releasing my feelings and not letting them bottle up in my body. So then I turned to poetry, and I never felt so free. It was the first time it all clicked all over again, and I never turned away from it. years ago, where I was just like, right, well, really 18 years ago, because for 2 years it was journal heavy, to the point I thought I was doing journalism. They're like, yo, you being too poetic. Like, people don't talk about Benny Siegel and cascading like that. They don't do that. They don't, because he flows. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, he flows.
Right. There's a lot of cascading going on
as he flows on this track. And they were just like, nah, you gotta stop it. So again, I think it never left me. It allowed me to traverse the world of literature, but it never left my bones.
That's dope. That's dope. Can I make one PSA? Can I make one PSA before we get out of here?
Do it.
For all the teachers in the room and the librarians in the room, let's figure out how we can start reincorporating fantasy and magic back into the classroom through literature. I do not know why fantasy books and magic books are not used more often in the classroom. I recognize that some of them are really, really long, right? But if there are other ones that we can use that work, we need to figure out ways. C.S. Lewis was taught in school. The Chronicles of Narnia was taught in school, right? Like A Wrinkle in Time was taught in school, right? And so I don't understand. And so as the national ambassador, right now, I'm going to put on my ambassador hat for a second and say, let's figure out how to make sure that we keep the options of literature being taught in the classroom to teach device and all the other things that we use the literature for in the classroom. Let's not block out quote unquote genre fiction. Like, we just shouldn't block it out. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? They should be awarded. They should be taught. It doesn't make sense. And I don't understand why we get this elitist nonsense, this hierarchy that some literature is and that, blah, 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 blah. You want to teach imagination, let them read that, right? And they'll see just how far their minds can go. Don't be afraid of it is all I'm saying. And I don't even write it, but I got a lot of friends who do, and they can't. It's strange. So I'm off the soapbox, but don't be scared of magic and fantasy for your classrooms. Ray Bradbury was taught in school. I'm so confused why we're not doing this anymore. Like, I don't know. Anyway, all right, I'm done.
He's upset. Listen.
I'm just saying, with the hierarchy nonsense.
Excellent PSA.
It's crazy. Okay.
I mean, it doesn't. Yes, Nindy. Children of Blood and Stone. The Akatawitch series is very good. Excellent PSA to end with, especially because you're writing one right now, yes?
I'm writing something magical, yes.
You are magical.
Thanks, Mel.
You are both magical. Thank you both for an incredible.
Thank you, Melanie.
And
thank you.
Those of you who've asked, yes, this recording will be available immediately after it ends on this platform, and it'll be on the Center for Fiction's website tomorrow. So thank you very much, everyone. Come back and see us and buy their books.
Love you, Mo.
Love you, Jay. You the one.
Yeah.
Protect your magic. Word up. I'm going to go back to this chat. I missed